Welcome to another episode here on Creepy with Coffee. I'm Kim. I'm sure a lot of us had gone through a job interview in our life. If you are still young, you're still in school and have yet to do so, probably this is a story that can get you a lesson about what you can expect when you go for a job interview. I mean, not everybody is going to encounter this, but this is quite an interesting sharing by one of our friends that wrote this story on Facebook. Well, like usual, before we start the story, if you have yet to subscribe, I would appreciate it if you could subscribe. Push on the notification button and also the like button. If it's not too much to ask, drop some kind words in the comment section as well. So let's get on to the story.
This is Creepy with Coffee.
After the lockdown in 2021, I was in need of work and managed to get an interview at an ice factory. At the time, only people with official travel documents could cross districts, so there weren't many workers at the factory. Remember, this is lockdown during the year 2021 in Malaysia. So when I get to the factory, I met this guy named Ali. He said he's the ice truck driver, who told me to wait for the supervisor, Nadia, to talk about the job. Well, I was just waiting around outside. After about 10 minutes or so, Nadia finally arrived. I noticed Ali was chatting with her first before Nadia came to me, and somehow Ali was pointing towards me and probably letting her know that I was there for a job. A few minutes later, Nadia approached and led me to the canteen so I could fill out some forms. Well, quite typical things that you would do during a job interview. As we walked, I observed the factory surroundings. It used to be a rice storage warehouse but had been taken over by the ice company. It seemed like a recent shift since there weren't many workers around. Well, when we were at the canteen, I filled out the application form while Nadia asked me a few questions about myself. She mentioned I could start immediately as a helper working alongside Ali and another crew member. And then she did tell me, well, the shift started early at about 5 a.m, delivering ice to various restaurants and 24-hour store. So before my shift started at 5, I was actually advised to come at 4:30 in the morning. Well, after all the conversation, the questions, fill out forms and whatnot, I have an urge to go to the bathroom. So before heading home, I decided to use the restroom at the far end of the warehouse. Well, at least that is where Nadia pointed me to. There were only 3 trucks parked, and I assumed Ali had already left for the day, as he had just parked the truck when I arrived earlier. When I finally got to the restroom, it seemed like it had not been cleaned for ages. The mirrors were dirty, and the sinks were covered in moss. Well, it felt a bit strange. Surely there had to be a cleaner around. Well, at least that is what I tell myself. But I ignored it and went about on my business. As I was in the stall, I suddenly heard the sink outside, the faucet, turn on. Followed by the sound of adjacent store door closing. As if somebody just came out from the toilet, washing a hand, and the door behind him or her was closing slowly. That kind of sound. But as I listened closely, there was no sound of footsteps. Well, at least when you come out from the stall and when you clean yourself, you would hear footsteps, right? This one, I only hear the faucet and the door, but there was no footsteps. Well, I tried to brush it off, but hurried out when I was done. To my surprise, when I stepped outside, the sinks were bone dry. Well, if someone had used the sink, it would have been wet, right? A chill ran down my spine as I left the restroom. Now the time shows 5 p.m. and the factory was eerily quiet with no one else around now. Ali, since earlier on, was no longer there. I don't see Nadia anymore. Well, I quickly got on my motorbike preparing to leave. Well, since I had to return by 4 a.m. the next day for the early shift, because the last conversation that I had with Nadia was I could start immediately, which is the next day at 4:30 a.m. When I was just about to leave, suddenly there was an old lady appeared and asked me, "Young man, what are you doing at the abandoned factory?" She told me The ice company was there, indeed, but it had been relocated long ago after the supervisor had been murdered by one of the truck drivers. Well, obviously I was shocked. Who had I met earlier? I hadn't eaten or drunk anything in the canteen. Well, thank goodness. Then the lady suggested I take a look at the canteen from outside the fence. Since that time, the both of us were already standing outside the fence. The spot where I had filled out my form was covered in dead leaves, which doesn't look like that earlier on, and the area was a mess, clearly abandoned for a long time. And from that distance, I can actually see the form that I filled out still on top of the table. I thanked the lady and quickly left. I couldn't shake the thought of what would have happened if I had shown up 4:30 a.m. the next day. Would I have seen the true forms of Ali and Nadia? When I got home, I felt sick for nearly a week. To this day, I still have no answers about who or what I encountered at the factory. Well, that is the story for this week. What do you think? Put down your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if it's you who attended the job interview and this is what you encounter, what would you do? Well, this is Kim from Creepy with Coffee. Until the next one.